Kia ora rā, e te whānau whānui i tēnei wā, no te rangi haukaha. Ko pirungia te maunga, ko pakoka te awa. Whaingaro ngunguru te ao, ngunguru te pō, ko Ngāti te wehi te hapu, ko Waikato te iwi, ko tēpora tōku ingoa. Kia ora mai tātou katoa. Good morning everyone. It's a real privilege to come live to be coming live to you from Aotearoa. New Tireni is our preferred name for the country that I'm broadcasting from. I'm outside. Unfortunately, there will be times where I will pop up my umbrella. I had hoped actually to broadcast live from the top of one of our sacred maunga here in Ngāroa Wahia. But again, the gods deemed otherwise. So, a little bit about myself. I came to meet our beautiful family, Native Wellness Institute, during Healing Our Spirit World, which was hosted here in Aotearoa, year 2015. By the way, this is organic, this post. I'm sitting right next to the main road where there will be lots of traffic. But where I'm located, you can see in the background there is a tree directly behind me, and you can also see the shadow of what we call a puke, or a little maunga. That maunga is called puke I ahua, puke I ahua. I've chosen this space for a particular reason. We have relatives who have tapped into the mana, or the power of our tupuna, the mana of the land, papatuanuku, the mana of our maunga which sits in my rear, puke I ahua, to protect the land that flows from the base of her through to the lands that have been desecrated with a road cutting between, and the land which leads down to one of our most sacred rivers in Aotearoa, that river being the Waikato Awa. He piko he taniwha, he piko he taniwha, Waikato taniwharau. More into that little bit about myself, as I mentioned. So yes, meeting our beautiful whānau from Native Wellness Institute caused me to look deeply within myself as far as history, generational trauma, intergenerational trauma more so. It's always a bit of fun having a train race through your picture. Thanks to colonisation, we too have a train track that has been part of that desecration. So my apologies, whānau, relatives, for such an organic broadcast. Yes, as I mentioned, so meeting our beautiful relatives caused me to look within myself and to unpack some of the trauma that I've inherited and the legacies of which continue through my blood and through that of my son. Healing Our Spirit World had a huge impact on me. For many reasons, I was somewhat discouraged with the planning actions and also the invitation given out for our people to pay phenomenal fees to attend the healing conversations and the actions of our native indigenous from all over the world who converge in a space we call Tūranga Waiwai. A place to stand is Tūranga Waiwai. So the fact that our people were welcoming all visitors such as our Blackfoot Nation and also Native Wellness Institute onto what we call a marae, a space where we meet and greet, or we have pōhiri, whakatau, a ceremony where we shift through different spaces to identify first who our visitors are. As they shift through these spaces, they move into another space where primarily we wish to identify what their intentions are, their reasons for visiting that space. Then we move into the space where we have the conversations about what those intentions are. And from there we move into then the last space, which is where we whakanoa, or we receive the blessing of food, which removes any tapu, or keeps people safe, I should say. During the process of that ceremony, we eat food. And by eating food, we're ensuring that our body, our tinana, our wairua, our spirit, our hinengaro, which is the space where the exchange of knowledge, mōhiotanga, as some may call it, the understanding, the knowledge that we understand takes place. We go through that ceremony of eating food to ensure that on a holistic aspect, we are blessed and we are safe to continue conversations for whatever those discussions may look like. So I was somewhat discouraged with the space that Healing Our Spirit World had shifted into, because they were meeting not only Healing Our Spirit World, all other Indigenous manuhiri we call visitors, first-time visitors, or waiwai tapu people. When we invite them into a certain space, we're responsible for their holistic care, and an aspect of which is called manaakitanga. Manaakitanga being the responsibility that we have as a people to treat our visitors as though they are the greatest gift that can come to us in that space. But the space at Tūranga Waiwai was not made available to the ringawera being the workers, to the general public, which include the invaders of our spaces, being those from colonial settlements such as England, who then made home on our lands. And then our Māori people, we weren't invited into that space, so I was discouraged. So too discouraged about the venue where Healing Our Spirit World contained the talks and the ceremonies of those who gathered to speak about how to heal within the spaces being desecrated, where colonisation is still very much apparent. My discouragement came from the cost of our people entering into that space. They are the people who are the most vulnerable. They are marginalised. The various injustices that they face, they're unable to enter into those spaces because the cost of entering into that space denies them access to the information that they could take back into their own homes to assist with the healing of their kaumātua, their elders, whose wisdom and experiences continue to guide us. Our elders being their children as well, the adults who perhaps are grandparents, who have had to struggle with the cost of living, their wants and needs being separated, their wants not acknowledged. Some of those wants I will be covering today. So those wants include our creation story, or Te Ao Marama. Also includes aspects of globalization, Primarily, resistance and resilience will be another topic. I will be focusing a lot on resilience, more so that of our wahine being our women, who through reclaiming our narratives are now taking charge and grasping the mana, the power, the gifts, the power and the gifts that have been passed on through us generationally from the beginning of time. There will be aspects of faith that I'll touch on as well, which includes whakapapa or genealogy. And then I will close with the significance of nature, or te taiao, as we refer to. Without further ado, continue on. Te ao marama. Te ao marama refers to Ior, for our people, the divine creator. Ior existed during a time of darkness, that time of darkness known as te kore. Within that realm, te kore, existed the infinite realm of possibilities. From te kore, we move into te pō, remembering, of course, that within the space of Ior, where the divine creator watches over all that takes place beneath the stars, from the ground papatuanuku up, and everything that takes place between. What I'm referring to with regards to te kore is beyond the stars, the realm of infinite possibility. From the realm of te kore, te pō was created by Ior. Te pō being the darkness. Within the darkness rests glimmers of hope. O ngā whetū o te ata, the stars in the eyes of the heavens. Our divine creator Ior also created te ata, I te ata. Within I te ata is those stars that I spoke about. Ngā whetū o te ata, the glimmers of hope. From te ata, we move into te ao marama, a significant space. The space of te ao marama is where the human form came into existence. But now I'll refer back to that space, I te ata. In the space of I te ata and all the previous realms that I've explained, those spaces were occupied by gods. All our gods who represent the greatness of nighttime, of darkness, who represent the greatness of the stars that provide us with glimmers of hope in the skies. Within the realm of te ao marama, the human form was created. But before the human form was created, there was a separation of Rangi Nui, our Sky Father, and Papatuanuku, our Earth Mother. The separation of the sky and the earth meant that our gods, who were born of the deity or our divine creator, they weren't happy with the fact that they were squashed in such a tight embrace between their parents. Rangi Nui, our Sky Father, Papatuanuku, our Earth Mother. It was dark. They couldn't see, they couldn't shift. They were curious. With that curiosity grew angst, agitation. Tāne and his brothers, or Tāne Mahuta, yet again a god, Tāwhiri Mātea, his brother, Tū Mātauenga, another brother. These three brothers decided to have a discussion about how they could release themselves from this tight embrace between their parents. Many discussions were had, and Tāne Mahuta suggested that they separate their parents to create a space where they could move freely. Oh, how embarrassment, yet another freight train. My apologies, families. Whilst I'm waiting for that train to pass, I'm being blessed. The rains are not pouring down upon me as I had thought they would. Okay, so back to the separation of Ranginui and Papatuanuku. The discussions took place between the brothers. Two of the brothers, Tāwhiri Mātea and Tū Mātauenga, weren't entirely happy with the separation of their parents, although Tāne Mahuta made the decision that he would separate their parents. So by laying on his back, a yoga position which I'm not familiar with, he lay on his back, raised his feet to the sky, using his shoulders to anchor him. He pressed his feet against his father, resting his shoulders anchored on Papatuanuku. He forced his father away from the mother, where the separation of Ranginui and Papatuanuku took place, allowing the light in. Many people consider that light the light of hope. But as we know, with light, many other energies enter into that space as well. So with the separation of Ranginui and Papatuanuku yet again, our sacred Earth Mother, and Ranginui, our sacred Sky Father, with that separation came great pain, grief, sadness between the parents who had kept each other safe and warm in that embrace. So too their children, who were the gods within that tight embrace, three of which I've mentioned. Tāne Mahuta, Tū Mātauenga, Tāwhiri Mātea. And my apologies, whānau, I'm very, very close to the road and it's become quite noisy. So I might just walk towards our maunga and walk atop, but continue speaking to you all. So you're now about to get an injection of houses in the road, but for me to allow some context, I'll reverse the camera and provide you all with some shots of what is considered a fence line, I guess, in real terms, but we call it the beginning of a fortress. So I'm just going to reverse my camera so you can see where I'm headed towards, which is our maunga. Puke I āhua. So this is the maunga that I'll climb atop, and I'll broadcast to you live from that position. You'll also see that we have a cemetery. This is a public cemetery. I'm just pointing out the space for you because where our maunga sits, right there, and the earth between that maunga, as I pan through the public cemetery, I'm going to head across the road in this live. I'm not certain if you can see in the distance there where there are the two trees. In between those two bushes or trees is an 80 kilometre speed sign, and a street called Cole Crescent. So all the space between across the road and the maunga that I showed you is a space of continuum for Māori, a space that's very sacred. But during invasion, our colonial visitors decided that they would desecrate these spaces and put in a road, put in a public cemetery, put in a railway track, so that these spaces where our people held ceremony, where foods were prepared and grown, that's been severed. So I will head up to the maunga and continue speaking. Sorry for losing track of where I was at as well. So I spoke about the separation of Tāne Mahuta, the separation by Tāne Mahuta of his parents, and that of his brothers as well. One of his brothers, Tuatahi, the god of war, he took umbrage that despite the conversations between the brothers about what it could look like to separate their parents, Tāne Mahuta took it upon himself to separate the parents despite the fact that his brothers said otherwise. So Tuatahi engaged in war against his brother. Tāwhiri Mātea being the god of weather systems, more so storms, when things, my apologies, Tuatahi, the god of storms, the god of war, when things in the heavens become tumultuous and the thunderous gods are sending messages of mistrust, grief, sadness. These are reflected through that god, Tuatahi, the god of war. So the separation of Ranginui and Papatuanuku took place the beginning of time, from which the physical manifestation of man came about, and that is Tāne Mahuta, fashioned from the earth, the first human, in creating a mound of earth. He removed one of his ribs to create the chest line beneath which the heart of that female would beat. The first breath of life of that wahine came when Tāne Mahuta touched his nose with hers, and the first breath when he exhaled entered in through the nostrils of that female from the earth that had been fashioned beneath him to create this female, the first breath. Tihe Moriora. We call the first breath, or the breath of life, Ha. Ha as an H-double-A. For those of you who have visited our lands, you will hear in karakia Tihe Moriora being mentioned. We're acknowledging our gods for that first breath. As you've noticed, I've mentioned that the first female was created from a god. So the first human, I te ao marama, being the separation of Ranginui and Papatuanuku, was a woman. I'm going to bring you back into the days of the 21st century. Within our sacred spaces, the very first voice you hear as a visitor to our lands is that of a woman. That woman will give a call which we call a karanga, So the kaikaranga will put out a call from the entrance of our sacred spaces, being a pā site or our marae. She will stand on the front of our meeting house, or the structure we call our whare tupuna. She will stand at that door and give a call to our visitors, greeting them to advance forward. The visitors will have another female who will respond with a similar call. In that call of the visitors' call will acknowledge the space that they're about to enter into. They will also include within their response where they are from and why they are advancing into the space between the gateway to that pā site, marae or whare tupuna, and the space at the end of that, which is the doorway to the marae setting. So that takes place between two women. Following on from the karanga, a manuhiri will take a seat on the left-hand side of that grassed area, and the people of that marae, or tangata whenua, mana whenua more so, being the people who have cared for that space since the beginning of time, will be seated to the right. Then discussions will take place about the intentions or the matter for which these people are advancing into that space to have conversations, a space of healing. So I've touched on our women being the first to be acknowledged into a space. They acknowledge everyone into a space first, although after which our men, which is our elders, our wise people, our kaumātua, they are our elder men, will commence what is called a wero. They hold the wisdom of our people, our kaumātua. It is their experiences and the stories passed down by their ancestors that are heard in the initial stages of those conversations. Why I speak about that space is I liken it to the spaces that I shared with you between the maunga behind me and that across the road. That entire space between the maunga and the river. You can see the maunga, my apologies. And then if I do a 180-degree turn, you can see behind me there is that roadside. If one were to cross over that roadside and take a quick walk through some of the pathways, those pathways lead down to the Waikato River. Waikato tani wharau, he piko he taniwha, he piko he taniwha. All these spaces to us are extremely sacred. As you can see, they've been desecrated. So a space that we might otherwise term as an ātea. An ātea being that space where we identify the intentions of our visitors. That's been removed in this particular case here at Pukeahua. I'm kind of going off topic a little bit. I wish someone could tap me on the shoulder and say, te pora, back on script. So I've set a scene as to where I am. I've spoken about our women being the first created by the gods. Excuse me, whānau, extremely, or families, organic. So I'm looking down at my notes. So I've spoken about the creation of man and the world that we live in today, te ao marama, where the sinners are. I am a sinner. The first sin was when Tāne Mahuta separated his parents. Legacies passed on, obviously, through those bloodlines when Tāne Mahuta fashioned the first woman from the earth. But their first breach took place at the beginning of time. So this has set the scene for the issues we face today as Māori people through globalization, the development of native peoples' lands and their resources. We have seen that that initial breach, continues in such a heinous fashion. So I draw your attention to the Waikato Wars, which I won't go into too much detail about, but the first aliens to arrive on our lands, they weren't the Pākehā, they weren't the English. They were in actual fact Dutch and French. Then of course we come to the Imperial Forces. Roman Empire certainly has a lot to answer for where the doctrine of discovery is concerned, because that impacted on us greatly when the invaders came and thought about lawlessness in a place called Kororareka. Their lawlessness included the rape of our women, our children, the genocide that followed of our elders who hold the wisdom, our queer, our elder women who too hold the wisdom, and the passing of the knowledge between our elder women, men and their children and mokopuna grandchildren was severed greatly during those early times when the invaders came. I need not go into the story about what possibly took place next. It was about gaining access to the resources, being the land. So our lands were removed from our people at the earliest stages, and those acts of assimilation to force our people off our lands included the whipping of our people. My grandparents were whipped. My mother was whipped for speaking her language during the earliest times of assimilation. So I am the product of a woman who is so resilient and whose determination to ensure that her children didn't endure those same pains continue on through me. That resistance. So I've been involved in a number of campaigns, not only in New Zealand but overseas with some of our other Indigenous peoples, where they find their lands have been reduced to a pocket of 2%, although they had the divine authority as the protectors and the guardians of their lands. Some of the pockets of land that they've been left with are also under attack, and I'm referring to a space in Australia. Puihakena is the Māori term we use for the city, Sydney. I made a commitment to join the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation alongside Jenny Munro, one of the elder Aboriginal women of Gamilaroi, and also, her other tribe has failed me. I made a commitment to join their fire the 26th of May 2014 to hear the stories as to why they've set up an umbrella to occupy space and reclaim the lands that were promised to them for Aboriginal people. Remembering, of course, that this space that they're reclaiming is right in the heart of Sydney. Jenny Munro elected to set up an umbrella, and beneath that umbrella she declared that space an embassy. Diplomatic immunity applied. So I joined their fire on the 26th of May 2014. That day, the 26th of May, a significant day in Aboriginal history, given that our relatives there had insisted that the government at that time apologise for the removal of their children over many generations. They requested an apology. An apology was given on the 26th of May. A speech was given on the 26th of May, although some 16 years later we would find ourselves in a position where yet again those shallow apologies fell on deaf ears. So the Redfern Aboriginal Tent Embassy was born. Jenny Munro and her family and their many networks converged on the small space on the block Redfern, the block which has its own history. It is renowned for a space where white man has controlled the narrative of the people who derive from that space. The narrative sounds a little bit like, they're nothing but drunks. We don't consider them human. We will send in, this is from a colonial perspective, our law enforcers to ensure that they toe the line. The law enforcers being the police. The police would come and introduce drugs into that neighbourhood, rape the children, murder the men, and set about desecrating the totems, the protectors of those areas, changing the landscape so that the natural flow of water was no longer available to sections of the lands where their ancestors had planted their food, had planted their medicines, where the plants that grew with such ferocity struggled to see the light due to the buildings and the structures created for the sake of capitalism. So our people, our relatives, our Aboriginal people were forced out into the regions further beyond urban populace. A lot of the lands that they were forced out to, the governments of those times considered them rubbish land. Such as capitalism. We see the value of whenua Māori people as the most important, together with the waters from our Sky Father and our Earth Mother. Yet unfortunately, capitalism and fascism means that people like our family from Puke'iahua, this mountain behind me, must lay their bodies on the line, must sleep beneath structures, canvas coverings with poles, making themselves vulnerable in spaces where we're told we shouldn't be in, because we're setting up our camps on the side of the road right next to our vulnerable lands where man has brought in their excavators that are chewing up the lands where food pits previously sat. The last of those food pits at Pukeahua is what our relatives are attempting to save. So the value of whenua and the value of water no longer mean the same thing to many Māori through colonisation. Those acts of assimilation have elected to be those footsteps within that perpetual wheel or cycle of madness. Really, I can't think of any other word to use but madness. They're distracted by technology, it's virtual space. They're distracted by the drugs that have crept into their communities. P is huge. Ice is huge. We have babies being born, ice babies. It is the mothers of these ice babies who are finding their way back to healing through the various distractions, the ties that they have with their marae or their pāsite, where their hapu, such as the hapu I mentioned at the beginning of this broadcast, my hapu being Ngāti Te Wehi. When you lose ties with your clan, you're wandering around a world searching for your tūranga waiwai, your place to stand. Through drugs, through the various acts of assimilation, as a result of colonisation, many of our people are wandering aimlessly, attempting to reconnect and navigate their way back to where their ancestors tell the stories and continue to tell the stories through the legacies being people like myself and my children. Our lost ones are attempting to navigate their way through those various ngāngara be creepy crawly germs, toxins introduced into our neighbourhood. We greet them with open arms. Our women are the most resilient, although in these times it's being tested yet again. We Māori women have the highest statistics or make up the statistics for women incarcerated. The highest statistics in the world are here in New Zealand. Our women are filling the prisons and the prison doors are bursting at the seams. We have women on the outside, many great women. I'm going to refer to a lady by the name of Te Puia Herangi. Kiri hei hei Te Puia Herangi, being the daughter of a great warrior, could see that her people, this is, my apologies people, I'm referring to the beginning of the 20th century. Princess Te Puia, as she became known as, could see that her people of Ngārua Wahia were lost. They were hungry, they were poor. Disease had taken over as a result of colonisation. So Te Puia set about having conversations with the invader, saying, I must protect my people. But before having those discussions, she spoke with her local tribe and confessed what she intended on doing, and that was to reclaim a piece of land that had been stolen by her people at that time. The piece of land that was given to her was considered rubbish land. With that rubbish land, She empowered our people lost to plough the land, to work the land, to plant our native foods from the seeds kept sacred, from the legumes kept safe, to plough and work the lands to grow our own food, to reproduce the settings that have been desecrated as a result of invasion. The whenua, considered rubbish land, was ploughed, was worked, meeting houses and structures were built, and before too long our people thrived yet again. Her concerns were not only for that area, but for the length and breadth of the North Island, and so too of the South Island. People began to converge. Our people, our Māori people, became aware that Te Puia Herangi had created from nothing a space of beauty, a space where our people would be safe, where within those spaces they could begin the storytelling of old, to embrace and treasure some of those stories about the beginning of time, to retell the stories of struggle and of hope. Those stories continue through the people of Aotearoa. My apologies, whānau. If I had that book, I could read some of their stories. But perhaps next time I can invite one of our family who are at the project. So faith. I speak about faith for a number of reasons, or hahi as we call it. Our faith as native people, not colonisers, began from the beginning of time. There were rituals and practices that were strictly adhered to for reasons. Some of those practices we call tikanga. If I break tikanga down, tika is right, is doing the right thing. Tika, T-I-K-A, if we add the letters N for Nelly, G for George, A for Apple, we're left with a word called tikanga. Ngā is a plural for the preceding word. So tika is right. Ngā being rights. The laws, the protocols, what keeps us safe, is tikanga. That is a faith. Although people within our various tribes, they stick. They don't shift from the tikanga at all. The tikanga represents L-O-R-E, law. Customary and traditional law doesn't change, although we've found with this latest ngangara, the ingoa of which has gone round the world and back again so many times. COVID-19 is the new ngangara, or is the new act of assimilation through colonisation that is ongoing. So, when I speak about tikanga and that faith, there have been many instances where the tikanga of our people has been dishonoured. Or we come to a position in time and we think, well, our tikanga is being compromised. This latest ngangara, COVID-19, has put boundaries up or limitations to some of our practices. Most recently that being tangiana. So when we, as a Māori people, when one of our people pass, or when their body and their lungs no longer inhale the ha, they enter into that space of mate. Mate being they have died. The spirit is still with them. There is a ceremony to lift that spirit. But when they pass their last breath, they enter into that space where they are mate. Mate is then taken into another space of tangiana, the ceremonial space where 3, sometimes 5 days, we will return the body of the deceased. That body then becomes a tūpāpaku, is the name we use for the corpse. The tūpāpaku is taken back to the ceremonial lands of that tūpāpaku's ancestors and laid in the whare tupuna, the meeting house, the sacred building where our people traditionally slept, had all their discussions, political discussions. That space would then be made available only to tangiana, or the process of funerals. With COVID-19 and the government's decision to encourage, or I say enforce, home detention, that also meant that they would begin to look at processes to come down hard on our people if they gathered on our sacred spaces such as the marae, which the government recognised would impact on our ceremony of tangiana, that we could no longer grieve for 3-5 days as huge collectives. Sometimes thousands of people will gather to pay their respects to the past loved one. But those practices were severed during COVID-19. That brought about great angst and grief. That intergenerational trauma came back again. In my opinion, I recognise that through limiting our people to 3 in that tangiana process, the grief would weigh heavy not only on the family of the deceased, but also the hapu, the clan, and all other tribes that through blood and through ancestry connect to the tūpāpaku. So our tikanga had been compromised. Through the beauty of this virtual space and my coming live to you today, our people decided to use this space and make decisions about how we would continue to honour the tangiana, or the funeral ceremonies for the 3-5 days, and what that could look like. So we adhered to the government's pressures, more so because in 1918, the Spanish flu, like many invasive energies that come into various indigenous spaces, the Spanish flu killed many of our people, came very close to wiping us out in 1918. We remembered that. But I don't believe great thought was given towards the knowledge, the wisdom that our kaumātua, our elders, enacted during that epidemic. And I'm referring back to the Spanish flu because the similarities with COVID-19 in Aotearoa, New Tireme, were significant. I'm about to get another train, whānau. So I'm going to turn my back. This is going to be really, really noisy. So tikanga, our tikanga has been compromised. Our protocols our protocols compromised to the point where we started to question ourselves. Raru or angst between our own peoples, where some were saying, no, we're going to leave our marae open. It will remain open for our people. Whereas all other marae around the country had closed their doors. To keep our people safe, our elders, our kaumātua most vulnerable, our babies as well. So we're shifting through those various levels. We're at level 2 now. Our tikanga compromised in that we could no longer hongi o hariru. Hariru for us means the exchange or the touch between two people. So the ceremonies, as I've mentioned at the very beginning, where we gather at the gateway of a sacred space and the voice of the kaikaranga or a woman from the whare nui or the whare tupuna from a solid structure will make a call out to the visitors. In between that space, the tikanga is adhered to. But at the end of that process or that ceremony, as you might recall, on the left we'll have our manuhiri or our visitors, and on the right we have our tangata whenua or our people of that space who've commanded that space, protected that space as kaitiaki, and have continued through whakapapa and storylines, genealogy I should say, command the right hand side. At the end of all the ceremonies, the tangata whenua or the people of that space will form one big line, and the manuhiri or the visitors will then greet each individual person of the mana whenua or the tangata whenua, will greet them with either a handshake and, more importantly, the touching of foreheads in the space, the hinengaro, where the mātauranga, mohiotanga exists. They will touch foreheads, bring their noses together, and when our noses and foreheads touch together, we exchange the ha being the breath of life. When we share the breath of life, our breaths meld together and we become one. That is very strict tikanga. The hariru is that process where we meet and greet face to face, and hongi through the touching of the forehead, the touching of the noses and the exchanging of the breath of life, where we become one and no longer strangers. So that was severed. We couldn't do that during tangiana. We're still encouraged to not do that, although we've relaxed some of those practices, our people. Although we're still in level 2, it's not uncommon to see us hugging and exchanging the ha, although we're advised not to. So tikanga is about the rites, the practices. It's about your head being the most sacred part of your body. If one was to wear a beanie or a hat upon one's head, removing that hat must be done, or the removal of that portai must be followed when prayers are given. When we're giving blessings to our peoples through the gods, we must remove that hat to allow that knowledge to flow between the realms, between this realm of Te Ao Marama, and for that wairua or spirit to continue to flow without any afflictions or anything stopping that movement up through to the heavens of Ranginui. Any of those hats, once removed, must not go on a table. So why not on a table? Because a table is primarily where we place food that will enter into our bodies, the most sacred space. It's the exchange of the food entering into our bodies. By placing our hat, which has come from our head, onto a table, we're actually saying that it's okay to eat our own head. We're actually placing a part of our head on a table where food is prepared to enter into our body, but our head is our most sacred. So that's a tikanga. A tikanga, whereas we must ensure that we follow the practices of our descendants, of our ancestors. Another tikanga will be to not cut your toenails at night time. Your common sense. Common sense prevails here. Night time, you can't see what you're cutting. Chances are you're going to cut your skin and you're going to bleed. But we believe that even in death, when we're a tūpapaku, the follicles of your hair continue to grow. Your nails continue to grow. To sever those at night time, you're inviting spirits to enter into that severed flesh. We must keep ourselves pure. It is within the light that those spirits, those not so nice spirits, are not as apparent. I'm still going off topic here. So, women, I've touched on the fact that our women are being incarcerated at such a high rate as well, although through programs that women have created on the outside, our women are learning more about the significance of their bond with their babies and the fact that they are so sacred. Women, we believe, are so sacred for a number of reasons. I've touched on wairua. What is wairua? Wai being the water. Rua could mean two. Rua also refers to pits or crevices in the earth and papatuanuku where food pits existed since the beginning of time. Rua also refers to plural. Tahi being one, rua more than one. So when we bring those two together, wai and rua, we have wairua, which in a deeper sense represents spirit. I'm going to use the first part of wai to explain the placenta, that which holds the unborn child within the whare tangata of our women. Sorry, I'm using expressions that you're not familiar with. So whare tangata being the house of people, that being the uterus or the womb of a woman. Within her womb, when the baby is growing within that womb, as we know, the baby is within a placenta. Within that placenta is nourishment for the baby who is safe in that warm pocket of whare tangata. And that sac contains water, sacred water. Why? The placenta, we also call that placenta whenua. But within that placenta or the whenua is water. Why? I've mentioned about rua being the plural. So within the whare tangata of our women, she carries an additional spirit when pregnant, or hapu as we call it. So women carry multiple spirits. We're sacred. The wairua, as mentioned, is the spirit, although I've just illustrated that within the womb or within the placenta is the wairua, is additional spirits are housed before they come out into the light of te ao marama. I've also spoken about whenua. The placenta, we call it whenua. There is a term we use, whenua ki te whenua. So from the land we came and back to the land we must go. Papatuanuku being our earth mother. The first womb or the first whenua exists within Papatuanuku, the first whenua, the first placenta. So when we use the term whenua ki te whenua, we're talking about the placenta must go back to Papatuanuku. Although the practices today that our people have undertaken is the practice of burning their bodies. again, our tikanga being compromised. Traditionally, or customary, we've always returned our bodies and turned our bodies back to Papatuanuku, back to the earth, to allow our earth mother to nourish and nurture the spirit and the physical manifestation, to help nourish also her well-being for the birth of new generations. All of these processes take place within te tae ao, nature. Our intrinsic relationships with nature will always continue to exist for time immemorial. Capitalism and that rabid beast, the fact that people are placing more value on a piece of paper that no longer exists, it's all virtual, are becoming unhealthy because they're spending more time in environments where they're not happy, purely for the sake of pūtea, or for making money to feed their children because they've forgotten how to plough the land that their ancestors ensured they would continue to be the protectors of. They've forgotten the practices. They don't know how to plough the land. Growing vegetables is now foreign to many of our people. Vegetables our people are eating are from supermarkets. Our people are eating McDonald's. No longer are the hangi pits overflowing with food to feed the hungry. Our hangi pits are under threat. Our food pits are being desecrated. Homes are being built on sacred lands where the food pits dating back to the beginning of time were worked by our people who had that intrinsic and still have that intrinsic relationship with Papatuanuku, the earth, her spirit. Our trees, our native trees, are being cut at such a phenomenal rate that our earth is changing and our birds are not singing in the spaces that we were used to once upon a time. The messengers of our tūpuna, our ancestors, have become quiet. The huia who sang so gracefully in the ngahere and the bushes were all the spirits of Tāne Mahuta from the beginning of time, his realm, those messengers are almost extinct. Like the huia, our birds are becoming silent. We take great umbrage to the wheels of colonisation. Our people no longer gather on their traditional lands. There are small pockets of us who honour the great words of our ancestors, who honour the sacrifices and the struggles that they've endured through the many years. Our people are wandering around aimlessly. Yet there is hope, and it is through protests like those that I'm engaged in particular this here at Pukeahua, where we're able to embrace our people who are lost. We've encouraged them to come and learn about reclaiming their identity as an individual and as a tribal person, to practice the LORE through Tikanga, the rites, the rituals. We can teach them how to do that. We go out into spaces and reclaim that space, or that wahi as we call it, for short times to ensure that people are aware we haven't disappeared. We are very much present. We continue our customs and the traditions of our ancestors, and will continue to do that forevermore. My beautiful relations across the various nations, I thank you for this opportunity. I feel as though I've gone off track somewhat, but I'm sure you will all forgive me. I want to close with a hymn. The hymn will bring blessings for all of us today. And without further ado, here we go. Whakataka te hau ki te uru. Whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia makina kina ki uta. Kia makina kina ki tai. E hia ke ana te atakura. He tio, he huka, he hauhu. Tihei mauri ora. Ka kite anō.